Good evening. Welcome to the Port Jefferson Village Planning Board meeting, June 12th. First item on our agenda tonight is to approve the draft minutes from May 8th. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to go through and give comments to Cindy.
I'll recuse myself because I wasn't here.
I have no comments.
Okay.
I have no comments.
Okay.
I'll motion we approve the May 8th minutes.
Yeah, I think it'll have to be as amended, right? Because I commented on them and you made,
Oh, okay.
oh, you did? Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So it's,
I received edits from Barbara and from Ray.
all right. So it's not really as amended because we didn't
Correct.
vote on it before. So,
Right.
okay. So Laura made the motion. Have a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Next planning board meeting is July 10th, which seems like it's far away, but it's not. Okay, we'll go into the work sessions now, and we had a request from Mather Hospital which is 75 North Country Road, to move to the top because one of the representatives from Mather needs to leave to attend another meeting. So we're going to get started and shuffle the agenda a bit just to accommodate 75 North Country Road. So if you'd like to come up and have a seat at the table, just maybe share the mic with.
Good call, Dean.
Can, yep. Look at that. All you have to do is say it, and it's there. Okay, and also, Tom, you should come up too, right? You did the review on it. Yeah, I guess you should maybe use that mic too.
Yeah,
So.
you got it. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Is that good enough? You could hear us? Okay.
Yeah. So we received, well, you should just go through what you received and the comments, so.
There were a bunch of items that were received by the planning department, and the staff looked at what was presented to us. And real quick, again, just to give you a brief summary of the project again, they're looking to add a generator in, looking to remove a underground oil tank and put in a new above-ground oil tank. This was referred to ARC because of the roof penetration penthouse for the ventilation for the new generator was required, and there were some comments on that. We did forward them back to the applicant, and we did request a cost affidavit. I think that was received today. Yes, that was received today, June 12th. So I'll review that and establish some costs and whatnot. The applicant, within the generator project, as well as with the oil tank, they are going through the Article 12 with the Department of Health to get all the required approvals for this. I did recommend that approval be put in place before any permitted work is done for the project. They also have to remove the tank, and that's part of pollution control. That's also done through the Department of Health. Again, that permit needs to be secured. They can sequence the work as they need be. They're going to probably have to put this tank in first, and then abandon the old tank because it is still attached to the existing generator that's in there.
Yeah.
As far as the new generator, they're using some noise suppression on the machine of it. Sorry. It is going to have a muffler on it that reduces the sound that emits from the actual generator, but recognize too, it is enclosed within a building. It has some louvers and venting above it.
Okay.
The only ARC comment that I saw there of any consequence was the metal enclosure for that penthouse. It's rather large. It's 8 feet wide, 8 feet tall, I think about 30 or 40 feet. That's correct, that's it. They asked if that could be, the metal in that matched the metal on the roof of the building. And I think it's a pretty simple request. If they want to do that, it's up to you guys to review that and comment on that, but I think it's, yeah, well, this is what they're putting on. They want to match this. This is what so it'll blend in more with the building facade, I think, with that portion of it.
Are we asking then the what would you call that, ribs also, or just the
Mm,
color?
Just the color, just the color. The construction of it has to be of a certain style, just for the venting and louvering of the
Okay.
generator that's in there. I did review, there were some letters that were submitted about the psychoanalysis and the SEF. This is a type 2 action. This is a rehabilitation of what was already there, so it does not require anything more. I think it satisfied that portion of it. And I don't have anything else. Any questions?
I do. The silencer memo and specs, I'm assuming
That's the muffler
So-
that goes on the generator.
you guys figured out what decibel level you needed
Yes.
within a certain space, and this is guaranteed to make it so that
Yes.
people living across the street, people behind.
Yep, so it's a muffler, it'll reduce everything by 33 decibels. And
Okay.
actually per village code, emergency generation actually doesn't need to fit within the criteria for
The noise
ordinance. But it will be muffled less.
Okay.
for the generator.
Yeah, I mean, good neighbors,
Yeah, yeah.
all that.
Again, it's in a building too, so
Yeah,
it's not
and
out
yeah.
in the outdoors.
Right.
It's within a structure.
It's internal to the existing
Okay.
footprint.
Just want to try to get the lay of the land. Where is the existing generator?
So, yeah, I can answer that. So Andrew Kelly, VHB, site civil engineers. The dark hatch building, the rectangle in the center of this plan that's here, that is the existing environmental building. There are 2 existing generators within that are being replaced by the new generators.
So when you come off North Country Road,
I actually
and
have
you make the right turn that road, that's the road between the hospital and that building. It's right there. It's right next to the chiller field.
Yep.
And it's at basically the bottom of where the new parking area, the raised parking area
That's
is.
correct, yep.
So
And
it's-
again,
So it's in that room, that the
building.
mechanical room?
Yep.
Or that building?
Yep, that building. It's in that building. Yep. It's one building. There's no change to the footprint of the building
And where's the new generator going?
in that building.
In
So
there as
just
well.
Yep.
adjacent?
Yep, it's just
Okay.
that you need to have that louvered
Yep.
height. That's the only change, the going up, not the expanding of the building itself.
There's
The
no additional
mechanical
square footage.
building will stay
Yeah,
the same.
And that's Billhorn Way at the bottom, is cut off at the bottom,
That's-
where you come
that's
in
correct,
from
yep, just
North
south
Country,
of it
just to
from
get
the building.
oriented. North is at the top.
If you'd like, I have an overall site plan here
Yeah.
printed, pass
I
it
think
out.
that you have one on here too, possibly.
You should have it, yeah.
Where's the in-ground fuel tank right now?
It's
So just kind of
Right there
off
with the
the
arrows.
southeast corner of that hatched area.
You see the bubbled area there?
Can I point to it?
That one you have
Yeah.
is better because it gives the
here.
context of the roads.
So,
This is the fuel tank.
Oh, no, that's good.
Right there. That's the existing. But that's new.
It
No,
looks like
this is proposed.
proposed.
The existing, I believe, is over here.
Yes,
moving,
that's-
It's in the ground.
that's
Oh,
the
it's,
existing.
you
Is
can
that
see it
this?
very lightly, is that it?
This?
Concrete
Yeah,
pad?
this is where they're taking out the old.
Yeah.
This is the fuel tank.
That's where they're
That's the
putting the
tank
new
that's
one.
gonna have bollards, and it's right next to the chiller field. You can see the chillers that are behind the cooling towers.
All right.
So are they taking this out?
That's
No, that-
those are the
that's-
chillers.
So this is what's,
That's all existing. That's the cooling towers. That's your HVAC. That's nothing to do.
what's the bottom gray, lightly grayed?
They gotta saw cut the asphalt and remove the tank out of the ground.
Okay.
And then they're gonna fill that back in and repair the asphalt.
That's just a work indicating an area of work.
Right, right.
basically.
Yeah,
And that's in front of, that's right here.
It's a little bit further in front,
Little
probably
bit
around
further in
here.
front, yeah.
Okay.
All right, Tom, you said that they're in the process of getting health department approval, so will that be a condition of
It's gonna be
approval?
conditional approval. I'll put that in the resolution that they will have to, before permits are issued, we can approve it here at this level. Before building permits
Oh,
are
no,
issued. They'll need to
That's fine. Thank
secure
you.
those other
Appreciate
permits.
So if I may, we actually did just get approval from the county, so we do have it. We have approval for the above-ground storage tank, and we also have the work plan that they issue for the removal of the underground storage tank. So
And-
those are in
Okay.
place. I do have hard copies.
And then
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
Tom's gonna need it
my
at
only
least,
other
so we'll
question
make
is, why
copies.
is this coming up now and it didn't come up
So
during the
they
original?
were evaluating some of the other interior space of the hospital and energy demand, and it came up with changing health department requirements and everything that this was going to be needed.
Okay.
Um,
So it's not because you had an expansion?
Well, it will help support the expanded ED for sure, but
Okay.
it's also going to add additional capacity for any kind of future changes in code requirements or any future requirements on the hospital. It's also going to help support the existing chiller plant as well. So that's the
Hospitals
main
are
reason
required
for
to
it.
have emergency
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah, it's just weird that it comes up after. Right?
The new muffler system will deliver better sound suppression than the system,
the existing.
muffler system on the existing system?
I would presume that it will, because it's a newer system. The generators that are there are aging. So this is a completely new generator system, new air intake, new exhaust system. So
And newer is generally quieter.
Generally, yeah, the more modern generators.
Usually.
Certainly quieter.
And just, you know, and that existing underground tank too is aging as well. That's the reasoning for going to an above ground tank. They want to kind of eliminate any risk with, you know, underground storage. So.
And then did you go over the,
I just.
oh, okay. So we can't really,
No,
okay.
but that's really the only outstanding thing right now, right?
And the ARC, they're willing to go with the colors on that, so I'll add that in next resolution.
We can
Okay.
do that if we may.
Sure.
So we are amenable to matching the colors of the existing roof. I guess it's like a light blue-green color, would you say? Yeah, so that is perfectly acceptable.
Okay.
I'll have a resolution for the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
As a
Yeah.
matter of housekeeping, we have the short form, but you're saying you agree that that wasn't needed? We did
No,
put
the
one
short
together.
form was needed.
Okay,
You
so
did provide that.
we have that?
Well, we gave a type 2 letter because we thought that it fell in
Oh, I
the
thought, we did request the,
criteria.
I thought it was submitted.
Um,
I'm sorry. I know
we
I did
did-
request it.
Yeah, we didn't submit one because typically with type 2 action we wouldn't, but we did put one together. And
Okay,
I
yeah,
have it tonight if you'd like it.
So we have an original and several copies for submission tonight. We will get you the original signed cost affidavit, just in the circulating, we only got a copy, so we need to get you the original. So we could do that shortly in the next day or so.
Okay.
Um,
Put the dollar sign for dry wells instead of the S. That's.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I gotta add up a couple things. Some things don't apply towards the site work on here.
Okay,
More building related, so we don't have to include them in there.
which
but-
will reduce the cost of the bond.
Yeah, reduce cost of
So-
bond and then site inspection.
Like doors, frames, hardware.
None of that. I mean, but part of selective demolition will be in there because they're cutting open the ground and things like that.
Mhm.
Concrete and masonry, again, we're putting in some bollards, they're setting concrete and steel and things on those lines. Dry walls. Is that dry wall or dry?
I don't see
It's
anything,
supposed to be dry. We have
I don't,
no increase in pervious cover, so drainage is as it
Ah.
is today.
What- I don't see
Okay.
anything in terms of, oh man, of course now the word is escaping me. Removal of the fuel that's there,
I think that's
disposal.
The selective demolition.
Yeah,
I would
That's
assume
in
that
there.
is in there.
So if we were stuck with having to do that, that would include the disposal of the hazardous material,
Well, I'll probably add some lines. It's small.
just because that usually is
Yeah,
expensive.
That's why I gotta go through it. And then I got the site work in here, and there's a couple of the, electrical part of that is underground trenching, for the feeders, as well as the piping. They're putting electrical to the building, the main building for this, which requires additional work. So, I'll put all the figures together and, do an analysis of the cost.
Okay.
And we'll set the bond on that and the, site plan inspection.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? No? 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 Okay. All right, I should have began by introducing Rachel Scelfo. She's playing the part of Anthony Guardino tonight. She's a partner with Farrell Fritz. Yeah, okay.
I'd say you could.
Thank you for that.
Okay,
Nice to meet you all.
Nice
Happy
to
to
meet
be
you.
back.
all right, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
This is the CIF work plan from the OPC.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm gonna send you-
These are copies of the approved stamps OPC.
Oh, okay.
to go along with it.
If we can have your review. Sign, if I look at it, sign.
Yeah.
For the next meeting.
Yeah, do you want, and I'll put, yeah, do you have the same language as usual?
So it's the
Same language? Yeah, I can do that. Yep.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to
And the
meet
next
you.
meeting's
Yes,
tomorrow?
nice to meet you too.
Yes.
Cindy, when's the last time that they can turn something in for the July 10th meeting, if you want to be?
2 weeks
I'm just to make sure, you know.
And is the 10th another work session or that's, oh, okay, so
Well,
that'll just be
yeah,
fine
we'll
for decision.
What-
It'll be a work session for approval of the resolution.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah, because we don't need another public hearing.
No.
Yeah,
No, we didn't. It was, yeah, there's a small part of the entire project that was necessary.
Excuse me, Rachel, would you mind these items that you just handed in, sending them electronically also? That would be great help.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll now move to the top of the agenda, 1601, 1607 Main Street, which is the Conifer 2 project. We've got to review a resolution to approve some fees for the project. So, yeah.
that mic is low? Oh,
You might want to share with me.
We can
Uh,
share.
we got it.
And you guys
I'll share. I'm good. I'm good.
Mhm. Okay, so we have,
Is this working? I think it's working, is it? It's working, yeah? Okay, I just wanna make sure. Okay, yeah, well, good evening. So this is the, I guess kind of an update to the Conifer 2/Port Jefferson Commons project. As this was a project that was previously approved back in, I believe, May of 2024, and then it was amended again in October 10th, 2024. But as part of the board's approval, there were several conditions that were required, for the chair and for the board to finalize to actually finalize the plan and get it ready for building permit. And most of those had to do with fees associated with the application. So there was a pilot fee, which is parking removal payment fee. There was a parkland fee, which is technically set by the Board of Trustees. There was a performance bond, which is part of tonight's discussion, and there's an inspection fee that's ultimately for our department, but it's set based on the performance bond. So our hope was for tonight was the applicants have submitted what they refer as a revised construction cost estimate for the site work specifically proposed for the performance bond. For the board to, I guess, discuss tonight in terms of setting that fee. And I know Tom and I both looked at it. I don't know if you want to provide any comments
Yeah,
on it.
We recently had some projects in our office with these similar type of work, and the unit costs are on par with what we were seeing in there. I didn't do a direct takeoff. I'm not doing linear feet of curbing, and it's just going to be there a lot of work to do that. But based upon what I saw here, I have confidence that the work as is proposed here is in line with the actual cost that it would be to install the site amenities.
I just have a quick question. In the climate that we're in now, with all the changing tariffs and everything, is 10% a decent unforeseen condition? I mean, did you do this today?
Well,
You know, like,
the contingency is kind of more for, when we say unforeseen, it has to do with existing conditions that are there. This is a new building,
right.
and most of the work that's being proposed is new in nature.
I don't know if we need to add anything in there if any of these prices jump up drastically.
If this was existing and we worked with an existing building, I would require a 15 to 20% contingency. Since
I
it's
don't-
new, I only usually would use around 5 to 10%.
Okay, I don't know how you guys feel about that.
5 to 10% accounting for tariffs?
Again, I don't know
I-
what's coming from overseas.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to adjust.
About the building, it's site work related, so it's concrete, asphalt. It might be a light fixture that's
Right,
coming from
that's what I was
overseas, so maybe some electrical conduit, but that's not the big portion of work. Big portion of the work is the drainage, precast concrete curves, asphalt, landscaping. It's all produced locally.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
good to know.
You said you didn't take a hard look at the numbers, though.
No, I did.
Oh, you
I,
did.
I took a hard look at the unit costs. I didn't go
Yeah.
in and do takeoffs. I didn't measure out how many linear feet of curb that's there. But I did count the leaching galleys, and I did count those. So
Just so the board is Sorry, Phil Butler for Charlie Deegan Tirana. These numbers were actually prepared by VHB, so these are real numbers based not only on their professional judgment, but also they compared these numbers to what was used for Conifer 1, which was actually a slightly larger project and also had slightly more on-site improvements. So these numbers are based on two
This
resources.
is a higher number than the Conifer One project.
Right.
This is about over 10%. It's about 15% more.
And this is brand new.
And there's
also,
some
by the way.
escalation in there, we figured, and things along those lines, as it's a couple years later.
So these numbers are current. They just prepared this a couple days ago, which is unfortunately why we provided it so close to today's date.
Oh, okay.
Previously, we were operating off of a very rough estimate that was taken from the grant application, which obviously wasn't a fully studied number.
How quickly does Conifer plan on starting?
Well, they, thanks to the state, they just got their funding this year, which is why the project is officially moving forward. So I think they're looking to start as soon as possible. We don't have a hard date yet because we're still wrapping up things here. We're still wrapping up things at the health department, but we're basically at the 10-yard line. So I think they're looking to break ground, hopefully by the start of next year. But I can't say officially when that would be.
Yeah.
It all comes down to when we finish with our approvals.
Yeah, it seems reasonable to me.
Yeah,
I mean,
same here,
it's-
Ed.
Yeah.
I just hope you guys aren't like the Giants in the red zone.
No, I mean, I think based on Conifer 1, I think they're very serious about getting Conifer 2 done.
Okay, and this just came in, correct?
A couple days
It's-
ago.
Yeah, yeah, so we haven't gone through in detail, or
Actually,
we're?
I went through it. I
Oh.
had my markups on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I had
okay,
my
so you,
markups, and
you're,
I
okay, I'm
compared
sorry.
it to a recent bid that we received
All
on
right, so
on
we're-
similar items.
So you had time on
And
this?
so, yeah, I
2 days?
spent an hour or two on it. Yeah.
Okay,
So you're comfortable with us actually
10 grand.
approving this,
Uh,
even with the 10%?
Yes.
okay.
You guys okay with the 10%, or do you want to?
I'm
fine.
okay with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I mean, looking
Okay.
at the items that might be a problem, you've got site lighting and maybe some electrical conduit. And it's, with that 10%, that definitely covers it.
Okay.
Okay, so we were going to talk about a couple of items on this, right? The pileup was, oh, you want to go into that?
Yeah, so,
Okay, yeah.
No, so, so besides for this, the next one was the pileups. The resolution basically was stating that the applicant would provide a measure for, provide for the lack of parking. So there was a deficiency for 13 spaces on this. They did the previous calculation, the most recent Board of Trustees resolution set it at 4,000 per space. This was reviewed recently and hasn't been changed by the board, so it was a fee of $52,000. That has actually already been submitted to our office, and our department had no issue with it, but that is part of, technically to formalize it or memorialize it as part of tonight's discussion. And on top of that, the
Parkland fee?
the parkland fee. So the parkland fee was recently, for a Board of Trustees resolution from, it was May 14th, it was recently, was revised to reflect current costs of inflation and and also the increased demand for parkland resources throughout the village. So it used to be, I guess it was most recently raised to $1,900 per unit. So they have about 53 units currently proposed for the project. So the fee ended up being $100,700 for the parkland fee. It's something that's supposed to be memorialized in the board of, as part of the planning board's resolution. We just wanted to bring that to your attention and for your awareness at this time. So that was adjusted. And the last part is a site inspection fee, which is technically part of the final sign off, but it's more on the planning side, and it's only 5% of the performance, or it's the greater of $250 or 5% of the performance bond. So we did some preliminary measures based on this calculation provided, and that ended up giving us an inspection fee of $39,603.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
Yeah. Did you say the total Parkland fee was how much? 107, was it?
$100,700.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. And those are the only items we had to talk about tonight, right? Just those?
Yeah, these
Three
were
items?
the final, really the final items in terms of
Mhm.
the final sign off of the boards. So we're hoping, as long as all these are met, the next step would be to prepare a draft resolution for your review at the next meeting.
Okay,
And we do have a final site plan that we submit for signature, so yeah, these fees, payment of the fees is the last check.
Okay,
for us to
good,
get
good.
final site plan.
Did we have to talk about staging, or it's too early to talk about staging?
Construction staging? I think
Yes.
you guys did staging plans as part of the
So
submittal.
there's a temporary construction easement that's been drafted. Mr. Reeling has reviewed it, Jim Burke has reviewed it. The only thing we're trying to figure out, that's still open is how we're going to define the meets and bounds of it. We have an easement exhibit, which is basically a map overlay that has been submitted to the planning department. But I spoke to Dan about that today, and actually we were waiting to clear this step until we finalize the construction easement. But it is drafted, it's been vetted, and presumably we'll be executing that and doing that quickly after we're done with final site plan approval.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just curious, are you gonna have to close, what did we end up calling the?
Perry?
No,
Station Street?
Station Street.
I don't believe we're closing any of the streets as part of the construction.
Okay.
All the construction staging is gonna take place in the parking lot behind. So apart from the restriping and repaving that occurs on Perry Street.
And any
Okay.
repair work that needs to be done, obviously.
Okay.
So that'll interrupt traffic temporarily when we have to restore that.
Any other questions, comments? No? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So just for clarity then.
So just for clarity, then the next step would be at the next board meeting, those fees that were established and discussed tonight would be set for the amended resolution. And then you would adopt the amended resolution with those fees in it.
Okay.
Okay? And there's no more discussion on the fees.
I thought we had to pay the fees before we get the final site plan resolution. Is that not the case?
Yeah, but we pay the fees.
Yeah.
And then we would bring the resolution forward and they would adopt it all with the fees.
Okay, got it.
We'll send you.
No, you need to vote on the fees now.
July.
Yeah, I think they were determined by the Board of Trustees, so we have no,
Well, when do we vote on the bond?
Tonight, actually, we'll be setting, well, if you feel you have enough sufficient information to set the performance bond. That'll be part of tonight's discussion, or if you need
We
additional.
might as well take a motion and vote on it, so it'll be final, the amount, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, my only issue was the padding, the 10%, but if everyone else is comfortable with it, it's fine.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the performance bond as presented and reviewed by staff?
I'll make that motion.
Get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, that would, it's supposed to be. Okay, 5%, okay.
Yes. Oh,
I got a question. You know, we established the site inspection fees based upon the site work. The performance bond you've adopted is only for the site work.
Right.
You know, this is a brand-new building being built. I think some fees for the performance bond should be applied towards if they start construction on that building, to whether it needs to be safe, guarded, or, and in the event it doesn't get completed. What is your thought on that, Andy?
Good question.
Well, we do set a bond for the building permit, but that's limited to $1,000, so I'm
That's
not,
just, that's permit.
That's
I'm
for the
just thinking of
permit.
performance is based upon performing the job that's
Yeah.
presented before us, so. I know that might be a Jim Burke question.
I could put it, we have another meeting to do before we adopt the final resolution. Let me talk to Jim, we could talk to.
I know, I might be barking up the wrong tree with that one, I don't know.
Isn't that what the building permit?
That's
is
what I
for?
thought, the
mean, you should-
building permit would cover that, but I haven't looked at building permits, so I don't know.
Yeah, the bond for a building permit is very limited.
Not the
That's-
bond,
Table the
but the
Yeah.
actual building permit fee.
I mean, if you were
Like
looking,
10% of
if
the
the village was paying for it, the performance bond would be that 100% of the overall cost. That's a pretty big hit
Yeah,
for somebody to take
it
on.
would be, it would be.
In this particular case, we're just looking for something that if Conifer isn't able to finish it for whatever reason, the village can come in if they
Right.
want to
And
complete it. So, yeah, Or
complete
safe
the
it off, I mean.
Just the
complete the site work.
It's safe enough to say, but the building has been started. I don't know if some money should be applied towards that. Maybe not.
We usually don't
Yeah.
do that.
I'm
Yeah, I
probably,
don't-
yeah, I would.
I don't know that,
I don't
We
think, I
don't
think you're
do it,
fine.
we don't.
yeah, if it's not something we've done in the past. it
No.
might be
Yeah,
so.
okay.
And we only set the,
Site work.
based on the site work,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Sorry
Right.
about that.
No, good question.
Fine. Okay, I think we're all through. All right, you're welcome. Good to see you again. I have no idea, but shouldn't this, in theory, shouldn't the building fee be assessed the way the site work is?
Yeah, it is. Site
Yeah,
calculated.
yeah.
I don't know what the percentages are.
No,
No.
no, I don't know, I don't know.
The building permits, I think it's-
Yeah.
That's just a permit fee, that's just for processing. It's not for protection. So,
It's the permit fee that's based on construction costs.
Can't even get people to build with that.
Hmm.
If it was a bond,
No, I know.
no, I mean a performance bond.
But the building permit's just a flat fee.
It's usually, permit fees are, at least as my experience, is intended to cover the processing fee. So it's something that government started doing at some point where they wanted to justify salaries and whatnot, so, yeah, even at $1,000.
Okay. 1037 Main Street. Hello, Andrew. Good. Okay, we have revised plans, and I'm sure Dan will go through this, right?
So yeah, this is the, as you'll quite remember, this is the application for 1037 Main Street, proposal to convert what is currently a single-family residence, but most recently used as a bed and breakfast, into a two-family home. Where we left off last time was a discussion about the applicant's current proposal and some of the parking spaces that are currently there. So just as a reminder for a board, the two-family home is a conditional use within the RO district. And has certain provisions within it that applications are supposed to meet for the board to technically approve it, or opine on, a decision for it. The project itself does appear to mostly comply with all those. There's no external work proposed. All the work is interior. All the existing, I believe, egress points are proposed to remain the same, and there's mostly internal work to more separate the 2 points of, the 2 actual residences itself. The last point of discussion, though, had to do with the first conditional use standard regarding off-street parking. So the code specifically says for off-street parking, for a minimum of 4 vehicles shall be provided, but not in the front yard. So during the last discussion, we talked about the applicants, what's currently existing in the property. They have a residential driveway that we've noted has been there for a long time. It's part of a CEU from 1985. Although not explicitly mentioned as part of that CEU, it's been shown in aerial imagery, so we've preserved that as a legally pre-existing structure. And then there's also these 2 grass grid parking stalls that are directly next door to it. So they're designed to look like grass. They're used as proved as part of that bed and breakfast approval from 2021. But they're more of a modern structure as part of recent approvals. So we took part of the staff report does kind of memorialize the comments we brought up during the last meeting. So when we had interpretation of the attorneys, they were basically saying that the applicant may be able to retain those 4 parking spaces that are currently within the driveway because it's a pre-existing structure. You can't, and basically becomes legally pre-existing non-conforming as part of that conditional use in the transition. But the 2 grass grid parking stalls, hopefully I'm referring to those correctly.
Go ahead.
Would require a variance under the current provisions because they were something as part of that bed and breakfast approval, but they weren't necessarily part of the CO or, certified on the property, and plus the conditions of that standard saying that the 4 spaces shall be provided, but not in the front yard. So a lot of the applicant, well, Mr. Thomas in front of us, in response to this, did provide an updated site plan for us that does indicate some of the points that were discussed last time, where those grass grade parking spaces could either be removed or they could be prohibited from use by putting plantings in front of it. And the plan kind of highlights both those options being a possibility.
I
for
said
this.
or on the note.
He did say, yeah, he did say or on the
Because
note.
both seemed acceptable. I mean, we can have that conversation too.
Exactly. So part of tonight's discussion too is, and what we're leading the board to is, kind of discussing which way they would like to lean towards those spacers, whether they prefer the plantings or prefer the, remove the spaces. The one note we did make is that, Mr. Thomas submitted a narrative with the application describing his intent for it and eventual intent to seek a variance. So we thought, as our department, potentially the plantings might be the better option for now, just given his potential intent and of retaining those spaces.
Except that, as we discussed, I'd imagine I'd have to get the variance and revise the site plan before I got the CO anyway.
You
So
would,
the temporary,
yes.
in other words, I need to effectuate what's in the approved site plan before I can get the CO at the end of this whole process. But if I'm applying for that CO while I'm also, or meaning getting someone in there to inspect and begin that process while I'm also applying for the variance, then I get it and then I don't need to do that, or I don't get it and then I do need to do that. But either way, I'm not coming back for a CO without either satisfying this or amending this with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I understand that one way or another, it needs to meet what is approved here before I get the CO at the end of this whole thing. So I would do the variance before that. I wouldn't plant instead. I mean, I guess maybe I could if the CO was, or the variance was taken.
I'm sorry, can you do a two-step CO? Like, do your CO for the apartment and leave that grass driveway for a while, and then maybe 1 to 5 years down the line, you decide, well, this is what I want to do, and then go for a CO on that?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I actually kind of want to take a little bit of a step back, because this is where we ended up after the last meeting and what I put in my narrative. And if the board stays there after today's conversation, I will go for that variance and hopefully be able to keep them, and otherwise follow one of these notes per our conversation. But with the benefit of last time's conversation and following up, asking some questions, clarifying with the code, drilling into what actually is and isn't allowed, I actually have 3 different interpretations, which I think are fair readings of the code, by which I could keep this as is without needing to remove it and without needing to get a variance. So I'd like to present those today, if that's okay.
Yeah,
All right. So,
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
so and then we can, if none of that is the direction that the board would like to take, we can end up back to sort of the details of the next steps as laid out in the staff. So I'll go from the sort of, I think they're all good faith interpretations of the code, and it's a little bit quirky. I'll cite a few different aspects of it. I'll start with the sort of slightly odder ones and end up with the one that I think is the best fit. So the first, looking at it, what was brought up last time was an objection to, essentially, as this outlines, the parking up top is fine, but the parking down below potentially has a problem. And I'm sure I was trying to ascertain what the nature of that problem was. And one was to say that we couldn't park in a front yard. So I wanted to see what the code said about that. And the other was to say you couldn't park on a lawn, right? When I suggested that it be called a lawn, that you can't park on a lawn. And I wanted to see what the code said about that.
Okay.
So in both cases, I think I found the sections of code that are relevant. They do exist, but I don't think either of them pertains in this case. So one of them is, if we want to deal with the front yard question first, it says no parking shall be located in any front yard, but that's in a section of the regulations which is referring to multiple residence districts.
Mr. Thomas, can you just quote that section of the code for the record, please?
250, 27, D3. So this is for larger residential buildings. You can't have parking in front of those, right? But I was confused about this because smaller residential has parking in the front yard all the time. That's where the driveway is, right? So I wanted to understand where that line gets drawn, and it gets drawn at multiple residence districts. So whether you interpret that to be the district or the project, it doesn't apply in this case. In either case, RO is not a multiple residence district, and this is not a multiple residence property. So that wouldn't preclude parking in the front yard currently. Now, we still have the provision in the conditional use, which we'll get to, but in terms of the parking as it exists today, it's not a problem that it's in the front yard, even though it was created after the incorporation, right? So the front yard is not an issue, as I see it.
If it's in that section, it sounds like it's not.
So the other one is parking on a lawn. So, what?
I'm sorry, but we had a staff report that spoke to this. The village attorney made a review and want to share that.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was, and we spoke about this, and yeah, so that was the update, or was, when the interpretation we received from the attorneys was that because of the conditional use standard, and the way the way that it's been interpreted, it's the way, and I'll read it, it says off-street parking for a minimum of, well, I guess I wish I had the previous section in front of it, but it says off-street parking for a minimum of 4 vehicles shall be provided, but not in the front yard. And the provision before that basically says it goes conditional uses, and then 2-family residents provided that, and then that's the first step.
Mhm.
And the way it's interpreted is, again, being a parking in the front yard, obviously a minimum of 4 spaces have to be provided, but the way we've interpreted it, and the attorneys have interpreted it, is that it can't be anywhere in the front yard. And this property does have theoretically 3, but I think,
Right.
yeah, 3 front
Which is
yards.
why it would go to the ZBA, and it would be a good mitigating factor for the ZBA. But again, I'd like to finish making my case on 3 fronts. The first one is a little more outlandish because it requires essentially this board saying this is lawn, but you're allowed to park on lawn in RO because the section of the code which prohibits you from parking outside of a driveway or a garage only pertains to RA, RB, and RM. And I can cite that section too.
So, I
So
want to add to
that's-
that
yeah.
also,
Oh,
if
please,
that's
go
okay. There, you'll notice, not to interject, I'm sorry. We get the additional comments to consideration section put in this
Yes.
report. And it
Right.
basically, because he is providing the project narrative about a comment made during the last meeting about front yard parking in residential districts, and we do agree.
I tried to send all this along in advance because I didn't want to jump the
Yeah.
board, but it's kind of been this back and forth. So I know it all comes up suddenly and seems sudden.
But it does say that parking itself isn't necessarily, right, within residential districts. So you look at residential district itself. There's no specific provision saying throughout all residential districts that parking cannot be provided in the front yard.
Okay.
But,
However,
what we found was that it does pertain to the specific use, the specific conditional use, and
Yes.
various approvals.
Yes.
So it depends on the type of development you have, the type of, I guess authorization by different boards that might be there, and that's where we come back to the conditional.
Well,
use.
I will get there. But what I'm saying is one interpretation would be to say that this is not parking, it's a lawn. And we are allowed to park on our lawn even if we remove the parking
Pavers
grid.
or-
Yeah. Which is super weird. I think that's a strange loophole in the code, but there's there's a section that prohibits it in RA, RB, and RM, but not RO. I know you're shaking your head. It doesn't feel like the right interpretation, but that's why I started there. Would you like to move on to the second one? I mean,
Might as
what
well.
I'm saying is if I were to pull out that grid tomorrow, it wouldn't be illegal for me to park there. I can't find a section of the code that says that it is.
Can't.
So if we were to call it lawn, then it is simply lawn. I mean, that's like, we have no intent to pave it. I got back from a walk today and my dog sat down on it and laid down in the lawn. You know, it's sort of like, we don't want our front yard to become a driveway either. But in any case, let me move on from that one. The second one addresses directly your point, right? Which is to say that essentially there's a distinction made in the staff recommendations between the parking up top and the parking down below. And the parking up top, it calls legal pre-existing. I've often seen legal non-conforming, but it actually is conforming. In other words, right now, there's no prohibition against parking against a driveway being in a front yard for single-family residents, right? So it's currently legal parking, and what the department has interpreted is that it's currently legal, it can stay. If I were to create it, that parking would probably run up against the conditional use provision, right? But you're saying it's there, it's legal, it's in a front yard, we're gonna let it stay. right? And it's not because it predates the code, it's because it's legal and existing, right? Because it's not non-conforming, it actually is conforming currently. And the same is true of the grass paved parking if you decide to call it parking. In other words, it's in a front yard, but there's no provision that says it can't be in a front yard for single family residents. It's legal today. We made it legally, and at no point were we asked to submit for a permit or an RO or get a CO. In fact, I don't think you need to get COs or permits necessarily for driveways. You need them to follow the zoning code, right? For example, I could put a small accessory structure on my property without a building permit, but I would still have to obey setbacks, right?
You need a DPW permit. for
Well,
the
if
curb
you have a
cut.
curb cut, which there was no curb in this location.
No.
So, but we did call them. As a part of the first time we came before the Board of Trustees, they did say, check it with DPW, even though we didn't have a curb, which confused them very much, but we went through that hoop in 2014. So when we put this in, it was legal. And again, it's falling into this weird gray area because the one chunk of the code that deals with multifamily residence districts says you can't park in the front yard. And another part of the code that deals with all the residential districts says that they are limited by width and set to 20 feet or the garage. But again, that doesn't apply to RO. Yeah.
I actually just found it. So I'm looking at 250-16 residence RO district.
Beautiful.
And it says conditional uses, the
Yes.
following conditional uses.
Yes.
2 family residences, which is what I
Yes.
believe we're doing,
No,
right?
this is the crux. This is the issue. This is the crux of this
Off-street
here.
parking for a minimum of 4 vehicles shall be provided, but not in the front yard.
Right.
Period.
But that's true for the other existing parking that's there that you're not sending me for.
So a driveway is not a front yard.
This right now is a single-family home. There's no provision in the code in the RO zone for parking on the lawn or in the front yard. It's just not said. Maybe it was overlooked, right?
I think
When
the
you-
semantics of it is
You make a change.
a driveway is not a front yard, is what I think you're saying. So you're parking in the front yard on your driveway. But when you look at the definition of a front yard, it doesn't include driveway. That's not part of the definition. I understand what you're saying.
The front yard is everything forward of the structure on the property, correct?
Nope.
It's frontage on a street too, so any,
Fronting on the street.
fronting on the street.
So driveways that leave a street and move onto a property are by definition on the front yard.
Okay, so
From a
I
zoning
have,
standpoint, certainly. That's how we've always.
So there's no,
Yard
there's
front.
no,
I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say, I've actually jumped to the third option, because the second option, I don't think anybody's gonna go for. I'll just point it out.
Okay.
Which is to say that this line that you just called out, which says, let me get the exact verbiage. It says, off-street parking for a minimum of 4 vehicles shall be provided, but not in the front yard. So the interpretation of this board and the staff to this point has been that those 4 spaces there, my driveway, may count for those without a variance, which I appreciate that interpretation. That helps me out, that works for me, and I'm happy to settle there if none of the rest of this is something that the board is comfortable with. But that is the front yard. It's just that it's pre-existing, so it's being allowed to not need a variance because I think we all agree if I had to make parking in a front yard as a part of this to meet the requirement of parking for this application, I would absolutely need a variance, right? I think we're all on the same page.
so
there.
I'm not, so you're saying if you didn't have a driveway right now?
No, what I'm saying is the driveway exists and is legal. Right, if I didn't have the driveway and I had to
Yeah.
make that driveway.
So,
I'd
and
have to
I
get a variance.
disagree.
Right.
I think that a driveway is a driveway, and then front yard is an unoccupied, which is the key word, an unoccupied ground area fully open to the sky between either the street line or a street line established on the official map, blah, 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 blah. But I think the semantics we're getting at is it's the unoccupied part. Everyone's parking in their front yard on their driveway, but
Right.
it's on the driveway.
Right, which is why I went down this rabbit hole in the first.
Right, and I love the rabbit hole that
No,
you're
no.
going down. It's a great rabbit hole.
What I'm
But-
saying is that the lower parking is legal.
So if
To
lower
this.
parking you mean by your driveway,
There's-
the paved part.
No, I meant the other.
The other
The other
one-
one is the paved part,
Where's-
the lower part is the grass part,
where's-
they're both legal today. And they
But
both pre-exist this application.
I wouldn't necessarily say that it's legal. I think that it was when I wasn't part of your first approval for the Fox and Owl,
Right.
but I think it was an oversight that you weren't
Parking.
asked to go for a ZBA determination of parking then.
And that's
It was
where
an
we-
oversight.
And that's where we landed in the conversation last time, because I needed to go to the code and try to find the part of the code that says that I can't have that. And for, for a one-family residence, which is what happened when we first came in for the Fox and Owl. A bed and breakfast is an overlay special use permit on a single-family residence. So it was and has been a single-family residence since we've been there, even when it was an inn, right? And we brought that in here, and I don't think it was an oversight. I don't think we needed a variance. I don't think we needed a permit. I don't think we needed a CO, and I think we were allowed to create and park on that when we created and parked on it. There's a provision of the code that says parking has to be paved, but that, and single and double family residences, that is waived at the discretion of the board for appropriateness, which would seem to have happened, at least by inference,
It's-
when we came before you before.
But you were an accessory use. So it's not necessarily a single, so by having a bed and breakfast, it's an accessory use to a single family. I think it was an oversight.
But what I'm saying is, if it was an oversight, I don't know what it was an oversight of. I can't see the piece of the
zoning.
code.
So you
What
would
piece
have
of
to,
code didn't allow it before?
so the parking on the front yard, the 250 dash, you're in the RO zone.
Wait a
So it would be, what was it, what did I don't have it in front of me now, the
Yeah.
250-16 where it said,
That's for,
The
but
conditional
that's
use
for
standards, you
two-family
mean?
residents. That's what we're
Oh.
doing right now.
Yeah.
So
then-
before it
but
was
then
legal.
you cited, I
we're
didn't,
going-
I
but you're-
didn't pull that one up, but the resident
You're in for,
district.
And I
you're
don't
in
mean-
for a two-family now.
I would say, I don't mean to
So-
interject, but this is a new application
Right.
for a new project, and that,
Right.
and technically under,
So I guess what I'm saying is, if you get to the staff report here, what I'm trying to parse out is if this goes to the zoning board, right? What is the difference between the lower parking and the upper parking? Both of them exist today. Both of them, I am saying, are legal today, and yet one of them is being asked for a variance and the other one isn't. They both pre-exist this application, so I'm not I think we all agree if I was creating parking to satisfy this parking requirement, I would have to get a variance. Zero contestation. But I have some existing property, both of which is legal. I can't find anything that says that they're not. I can't find an
You
oversight.
know, I'm
I
sorry.
can't find a variance I should
With,
have gotten.
with Laura's definition that she just read,
Yeah.
that the front lawn is, I'm going to paraphrase. 'cause I can't-
Unoccupied. If that means structure
Unoccupied.
or exclude driveways, I'm not sure.
Well, let's look at a grass lawn, but
Okay.
it's saying unoccupied, open above.
Yeah.
But with your lower parking lot, it's not on lawn because it's paved.
Sorry, which one?
Your
The-
lower
The upper
parking,
one is paved, but that's okay. So
but the
paved
bottom one
No,
is
no, that's fine.
also
That's-
paved with paving concrete blocks, right?
No.
This is,
I
mean,
think
this
we're-
really is a ZBA
I-
matter.
I-
I mean,
that's what we're getting at.
you
I
should
guess
go,
I
you
don't
should
know
go
what-
for an interpretation with the ZBA. You don't have to go for a variance, go for an interpretation. That's an option you can take.
Well,
There-
so
I
what they
think-
would be interpreting would be this piece of code which says whether or not I guess what am I being asked for a variance for explicitly?
Parking in the front yard,
And why does that not apply to the other lot?
because you have I mean, the other, where
Yeah.
your cars are, because it's a driveway.
How is this not a driveway?
Well, that's my point, because the Historical Society has the same thing.
No, listen, nobody more zealous than when they're their own client. But like, I've drilled down into this and I've tried from a former ZBA member's perspective to parse out exactly what it is that a variance is being asked for. And I cannot separate the difference between the upper lot and the lower lot from a legal standpoint. They're both existing and they're both legal, and the one is getting waived and the other one isn't.
Okay, so I think I understand your comment now. I'm getting there. So hypothetically, let's hear this out. But I still agree. I think you're gonna need to go to the ZBA.
Oh,
Oh, okay. But
Yes.
what he's saying is, what if his driveway wasn't paved? What if it was those with grass in it, and that was his driveway? Just because and I'm not, listen, all I'm trying I'm just trying to get our communication.
There's a curb cut.
It has a
was part of
curb
the
cut.
original development. I mean, it has a history. And the lawn area that he created within the lawn was attached to the bed and breakfast special permit application. It was an accommodation to allow you to have, your B&B guests. Now you're going to a two-family house where the demand for parking is less, and it shouldn't even be necessary.
Technically, it's not necessary on paper. We own it. We've spent a lot of effort maintaining and making it. It is useful to us. We like it. It looks like a lawn, but it's functional. I'd rather not rip it out after having made it twice. So that's why. But
Ask you to rip it out.
and I will. This is why I am going to the if we end up where we envisioned in the revised staff report after our last conversation, and I need that variance, I would go attempt to get that variance. But obviously, it's both the time, the money, and the uncertainty that I'd like to avoid with a good faith interpretation of the code, which is basically to say, I think this provision is there to make sure everybody's front lawn, as you intensify a use, this is true for both conditional uses. It's true in RO for two-family and for one family and one business, that you can't, it precludes the but not in a front yard, right? But the thing is, we were already saying I've got existing parking that is legal, and that's getting a pass.
Well,
For-
Typically two.
One
right?
driveway.
Yeah, so you have technically two driveways, right?
Well, but the section of the code that limits that doesn't apply to RO.
Jim, just use the mic. Use the mic, Jim.
Here.
You can have more than one driveway and all that.
Well, it just doesn't.
Dan?
It just doesn't speak to.
Turn the mic
Yeah?
to Jim. Thanks, Jim.
Here. 250, 33, 3. Oh no, sorry.
It allows for driveways in the front yard.
A and B.
250-16.
Do you think,
I don't have
do
it
you
in
need that
That's-
hatched out
that-
area?
you mean
or
this
do
one
you
right
think
here.
You're gonna need that for the operation of the two-family, the hatched out?
No, we just don't want to rip it out because,
No, no, I
it
don't
means
think
a
anybody's asking to rip
friend
it out,
can come over to a
Well-
barbecue and park off street. It means
Yeah.
I can back in near to the kitchen door from Costco. It's like,
So,
it's a useful thing. Well, we mostly let the grass grow.
We did,
Yeah,
I don't
go
wanna
ahead.
not-
No, please.
So we did ask him and again, I so appreciate you doing all of this. I hope you don't feel like we're being, yeah, I don't, we're not trying to be adversarial, but
I'm not trying to get away
yeah,
with something.
no,
This
and-
is meant to
and
be
I-
a good faith interpretation.
yes, and I'm really glad that you're here, and I just wanted to clarify that. But what we did ask is that in order for us to approve plans for a two-family dwelling, we were saying you cannot have parking on your plan, on your site plan. He could not indicate that as parking. So in order to prevent that from being parking, there was either rip it out or put plantings so that it cannot be used as parking, or go for a ZBA and get a zoning
Or
or a variance for the parking.
one other option. I don't want to speak for the whole board, but I don't think we're looking for you to ask you to rip out the grid, but do the landscaping and then go to the ZBA and see where it lands.
If you need it.
No, I would go to the
Maybe
ZBA before trying to close the permits. I wouldn't have to do the landscaping and then pull it out,
No.
but either way, that's a cart horse.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
so the board,
yeah.
as another option too, could also refer the application to the ZBA, so this could all be one kind of process together.
Well,
And-
right, I'm
should.
trying to
No,
move
I know you
things
are, I
forward.
know, I
Um,
understand, I'm not trying to
I mean,
add
it's,
anything, I'm just-
right, the third option, which I never really quite said, was it talks about off-street parking for a minimum of 4 vehicles shall be provided, but not in the front yard. I'm providing those 4 vehicles in the driveway, and so in a way, this could be interpreted as not even referring to the other thing,
What do you need now?
if that makes sense.
The planning board needs to approve this? Is that where?
Well,
we're at?
where
You
we
have to
went
get the
in
permit
before
for the
I
two-family?
turned the table over and started spitballing here with the code was that we were going to, with the board's agreement, approve it with the note, either one or both, of those notes about planting and removing the
some-
grid,
some later
so
date.
that I could say, come in next week to the building department and say, all right, let's talk about steps to actually make this two-family, get our CO, make sure all our ducks are in a row, and also at the same time go in for the ZBA and say, can I please not do that? At which point, if they granted it, I would come back here and I would amend the site plan and we would keep it
Or you could
and
choose
close
just to
the
put some
CO.
plantings there or whatever, if you don't need it, if you don't feel you need it. But that's up.
I mean, dissecting to put the plantings in temporarily would be a pain in the neck, but I can do it if it came to it on the timeline. But
I mean, how many linear feet of plantings are we talking about?
I'd
not much.
probably do sort of 2 of them centered like bollards to prevent people getting in there at all, and just sort of a spot planting.
I mean, that seems to be the most sensible thing to do. I just
Well,
agree
that's-
to
but that's-
planning,
Could you
do
even
agree to
have
the
it in
plantings and
planter-
then go.
But then I need to go to the
Right.
ZBA, and what I
Right.
was arguing here is that because just like the upper parking lot, this, I think, it falls into a strange spot of the code. Because it's RO, and
it was
it's, I
prior
think
legal. and then-
maybe it's an accident, but also RO used to be much more permissive. It's been modified many times to make it less permissive, but it is a transitional zone. It's
It's a
not
tough
a
one.
commercial
No, it is.
zone.
It's a tough
So-
zone.
And
I dealt with it.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
the fact that I'm not limited on the width on my driveways, and that my driveways are allowed to be not paved, and that they're allowed to be in the front yard, means that currently that is a legal driveway.
However-
Which was not an oversight.
Yeah,
at the
no.
time of the prior
But now
permit.
you
In fact,
Okay.
I could have theoretically put in without applying for a variance,
So,
right?
but I think the intent,
but that
I
was
think the intent of the RO district and that code,
No, because you're gonna have a driveway. everybody can have a driveway.
yeah, so I think the intent, let's just,
A
listen, let's
driveway.
pretend that we're the ZBA right now.
Excuse
Right.
me, board, for the purposes of the minutes and the recording, can we speak one at a time,
Right.
please, into the microphone?
Yes,
Thank
so
you.
I think, so this is me, I don't know how we would all vote, but I would prefer that you stick with our first initial, and I appreciate that you went into the code. However, I think that the code intends that a reasonable width for a reasonable driveway is allowed in the front of the house. And what we're trying to avoid is people parking on their front lawn. So the intent is that we don't want basically parking lots. And I don't think anyone wants to see, even though the RO is more permissive, I don't think anyone wants to see people parking, even if it's gridded, that they don't want to expand the driveway or expand the parking in all of RO. So,
If I were rewriting the code, I would change RO to not allow front yard parking for any use, because it doesn't matter what's going on in the building, what you're looking at. The huge driveway went in down the street on this beautiful rolling green lawn, and I foiled the file because I was like, did they need a variance for that? They had a stop work, and maybe it was related to the curb cuts or something, but they ended up building it, and there was nothing in the file about needing a variance, needing a permit, needing anything, and it's this huge expanse of gravel where there used to be lawn. But that's the Main Street, right? That's about the visibility, and RO is all bordering Main Street, right? So I
That
think
was
the
intent
code,
of the code,
that
is
was the,
such as a
right,
transitional
but
zone.
I've got 3 front yards, which the code is written to call them all front yards, but
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
change RO to not allow any parking on Main Street's front yards,
On Main, on the front yard
regardless of the use. But
on
that's not,
fronting on Main
but that's
Street
not what the
itself?
code says. You're saying I can't park on grass, the code doesn't tell me that, and you're saying I can't have a driveway beyond a certain width, and the code for RO doesn't tell me that either.
But it's,
But
I mean.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the intent. The code can't spell out every last little
say
thing.
code.
Out for other zones and not for RO. That's
But then you were arguing that you were a single family, right?
we are
And then,
farmland.
okay, so then you said that I haven't looked at that code today, but you said it's prohibited to park in your front yard for a single family.
No,
not.
it's not,
It's
but
allowed.
it is for a two-family.
Right.
It's it, and that's
Yes.
what we're talking about
But,
tonight.
and what I'm saying is that the other parking lot is pre-existing and legal and being waived through.
For a one-family and a B and B, not for a two-family. And that's what we're looking at tonight.
But that's now my 2-family parking. The
You're
4
coming-
spaces
Yeah,
up
yeah.
there
Yeah,
are
that-
my
that- yeah.
2-family
We're not-
parking.
Nobody's arguing
Right.
that that's
And,
not
and,
legal.
and I appreciate that interpretation rather than getting a variance for that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's no distinction legally in the code
See it.
between that and the other driveway. I could have it when it was a 1-family, and now it's legal and existing. if I had to create it as a part of this permit, I would need a variance, but I don't. Anyway, I've made my case. I think it's now understood. I'm not seeing a lot of takers, but, and so, you know, obviously, if that's the case, I would go with the other thing, but I do look to the letter of the
Probably
law,
not a-
and it
probably not
doesn't prohibit what I'm doing.
It's probably not an RO, a property in the RO that doesn't have
Well, that,
front, off-street front yard parking.
every single one up and down both sides
On
of
a,
the block.
on a
They're all
driveway,
through
Jim.
lots, and they're all,
On a driveway.
no,
Yeah, yeah,
not even,
well,
not
right,
even.
right. No,
Go
I
down
agree.
Franklin Street and First Avenue, they all have nose-in parking in the back all along that street. The entire front yards
One
of the
area-
rear lots of that stretch are parked.
Every house, there's a designated driveway, and most houses, if not all, have one driveway.
Right. I'm
State
just,
code, that's-
and it's,
the town
and that
code,
is
it's
true
every-
for all the
every
other
town
residents,
code I've ever read.
and that's true for our code for
Right.
other residential districts, but not for RO.
It does, yeah, I know, the driveway code
I-
refers-
you know,
refers to
all right.
all of it, doesn't mention all.
So, looks like I didn't persuade anybody, even though I think I'm still reading the code correctly. I don't know.
You're not
It's
wrong.
like, if this came before, the problem is now I'm gonna go to the ZBA and I'm gonna say, I need this exception, and I guess the exception is to the front yard for the other thing, but I see no distinction between that and the lot, which is acceptable,
Why do
that's
you
all.
need, why do you need the CBA? If you're not, you don't think you can use it for the most part, the hatched out area?
Well, that's it.
As part of.
But that was the first option. We could call it lawn, and then I'm legally allowed to park on it, which is a fluke of the code that's excluded.
You're saying,
Yeah.
would the
I don't
board
know.
be,
Hmm?
would the board be agreeable to, I mean, you want the board, the plant.
Well, yeah, and
Planters
that's,
are meant to-
and that's
Would
the,
board be agreeable to plant turfs? I mean, does it have to be in the ground, or could it be?
The purpose of it is to disable it as parking, and I'm looking to retain it as parking. Occasionally. I want to be able to pull in and unload stuff or have extra guests without them pulling onto a very narrow street that's two directions.
Yeah.
On both sides. Nobody parks on Frank.
Those
It's
situations.
dangerous, especially in that first block stretch.
yeah, so I think, so where I'm at is I would ask for either, you know, we can approve it as you've amended it.
Okay.
Then go for a variance, or you can go for a code interpretation. But I don't think that we're,
But we'd have to wait on that, so either way.
well, I'm not, I don't, once it passes us, I don't know how the,
The bubble says, patch existing grass stabilizing system, to be removed or to be blocked for parking by new plantings at street.
do you want one?
Well, that's fine. One recommendation, we had, it's totally up to the board. We did make a recommendation, of maybe if the board wants to decide one or the other, a condition of the final approval being just one of those removed, just say specifically which one's gonna happen, just for clarity purposes of reporting.
I
Okay.
prefer to keep both for the purposes of if I actually end up losing this variance, I'm gonna have to make a call about, you know, if they're not there
And
for
then
parking, I
that's
might
when-
rip them out
Yeah.
of that scenario,
Yeah, that
but
would
I
be a
don't want to
condition.
do either.
That's a condition, so
Right.
then you would just remove it after.
Right.
It'll be like,
Sorry.
oh, sorry, that would be the chair. I'm
No,
sorry.
please go ahead.
So, what, we're saying is that, like, so, the application has to be done, right? You say you go to the zoning board, and they either approve it, or they don't approve the variances, they don't approve the variances, and then a decision has to be made. Once the decision's made, then you submit that part, the final petition of the board's approval. I mean, they
So we
make
can
more
approve
seals
it,
issue,
we
they
can
make-
approve it as worded now.
Yeah.
But the condition would be, once you decide what you're going to do based on
Ah.
CBA, based on everything, you amend it and then resubmit the plans.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Just
a
so
formal-
there's clarity in the document between that and what I did, rather than an ambiguous approved site plan in the record. Makes total sense. Okay, thank you. All right. So, well, yes, I gave up because I had no takers on my novel theory. I do wish the code were clearer, because I think there's
just don't
there's
think-
ways in which I believe I'm interpreting the code correctly.
And that's why we have a planning board and a zoning board, is because code can't be specified for every little nitty gritty. And, you know, perhaps you're bringing up something that needs to be fixed, but that's a,
Zoning is not even held to be constitutional unless you had a zoning board. That's just back in 1930. If you need it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that you're willing to approve the change of use will resolve this parking issue with the ZBA. Thank you.
So does he need a referral
Maybe you
letter
should
from
work for
the
the, maybe you should try and get on the CPA.
We'll find that out.
Maybe someday.
My minutes are all messed up for this
Oh.
application. I don't know.
So, should I,
Which application is
do
this?
we need, how, what are we,
Oh,
This
okay, let me
bylaw
just
is what
listen
our
to what they have to
CBA
say. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm aware of
Was
that.
there a vote or anything?
Yeah, the next.
Not hearing them.
I guess if you feel inclined to vote on it, then what we do is the next meeting, we'll probably prepare the draft resolution for your final review and approval.
But that, the approval of this, of the plan now would allow me to go to the building department and start to next steps. And not really, but it's a conversation, they're gonna get the COs. Yeah.
So I'm just curious what the action the board is taking now. Are we looking at a conditional approval, or are we looking at passing on moving anything this date? Are we looking at making
I would-
an approval with with a referral to the ZBA? I think staff just needs a clear path on what the board is doing.
what,
Seems to me that like we would be moving the application.
Talk into the mic, Lee.
Sorry.
That's
Is that
okay.
turn on?
No problem.
That we would be approving the application with this.
new
most-
site plan?
With this most recently amended site plan that includes the bubble that speaks to the grid and the planning option.
Yeah, so
Alright.
can we, because I would like to move him forward. So can we approve the site plan that we have before us?
And then if he chooses
Yes.
to go to the zoning board at a later date, we're not holding him up on the
Right.
renovations.
But he could not effectuate what the zoning board approves until he comes back to the planning board to amend his site plan.
No, we understand
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
but we're not.
Just wanted to make that.
But
Right.
I just want to, I would like, since it sounds, we have an agreeable site plan in front of us, I would like to be able to take a step so that this gentleman can move forward.
Right.
It was fun.
But to be clear for the record, it is not a conditional approval. It is an approval of the map
Well,
before the board.
Yes.
It, on, the only condition being that if this site plan is the one that he uses, he comes back with an amended wording of what he chose to do in the front. Remove the or,
Okay.
and that's it. Yes.
I just have a quick question, I guess for our staff too, just to make sure, because the way conditional approvals are, is certain conditions are required for, the chair to sign off the plans, certain conditions are required for building permit, and certain conditions are required for a CO. So I think in order for a building permit to be issued, this would have to be required as a CO, the submission of the final plan.
Right.
correct?
Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, so I think that's, well, because if it's a condition of the chair to sign off on the final plans, then technically a building permit couldn't be issued until we have that resolved.
So the applicant,
I need a permit, but that's a conversation with the building department, but I do need to get a
Well, for interior renovations, then
we'll see if it's.
we need to see if that's required.
we would have to look into it. Okay.
Yeah, that would be the building department's call, I think it's so minimal that maybe not.
Well, we'll
Maybe-
need,
I mean,
we'll have to
maybe
do an
pro forma-
inspection on that.
Maybe the pro forma method, right, we need to be able, we need the go-ahead enough to get that process rolling, is what I'm hoping.
Right. So I think you would need to file a building permit application. The inspectors would go in and say, no permit required. And then, or whatever issue comes up would have to be rectified before you get your permit, right?
Which is what I'd like to find out, exactly.
So I think procedurally, we could get a building inspector in there anytime you would like to have a building inspector come through, and that would accelerate the process.
Unfortunately, I'm out of town for a week, but then I'll be back and we'll set it up.
Okay.
But Andy, can we approve this? Like,
You-
what exactly are we, so if I was to make a motion, I motion that we approve the site plan
Right.
as amended with the condition that he comes back.
I think that's a confusing condition. If he changes his site plan from what you approve, he's required to come back.
Okay,
And if he doesn't come
Then-
back, eventually it's an NOV.
okay,
So. Right.
okay. So
Right.
I motion that we approve the site plan right before us,
I second the,
as presented. Thank you, lawyer.
I second the motion.
So you're gonna take,
All in
we can
favor?
write up the
Aye.
resolution
Aye.
after? Okay.
I just want this gentleman has good faith. Everything, he's done everything that we've asked of him. I just want I want to get him moving. You know, I don't want to hold you up for any, anymore.
And he's sufficiently confused us that we.
We're all gonna be reading the code tonight.
Oh, this makes sense.
Then he
Yeah.
goes to building permit application to get the new CO.
So just to be clear,
I love the Venn diagram. That Venn diagram is worth
You
the price
still-
of admission
you
today.
you still need a resolution that has to be signed by the chair.
Yes.
So we will bring that resolution to the board July 10th. That
Okay.
needs to be signed by the chair,
And the
along with the site plan.
But can he move forward after?
He can bring his plans in to
Okay.
be signed, but he can't do anything on site. Call up, I will send an inspector in, he'll take a preliminary look, and if you need to file a building permit after that, you'll know that.
For the new
Okay.
CO.
But we're gonna have to have one more action at the next meeting.
Yeah, on the resa. Right, correct.
I'm so much more used to CBA, we were like, get her done that night.
Oh, you're very efficient.
Okay.
I love this.
Very good.
Respect what y'all.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
This is awesome.
Here, this is the code that refers to.
I love it. Thank you. This is great.
All right, well, we got one more?
So you took longer,
I almost suggested that we switch the orders because I knew this was gonna be longer.
and,
Yeah.
and you took more time than the $6 million generator, so.
Yeah. Well.
No one more zealous than their own.
Yeah.
True. Okay. We got one more item on the agenda. 1600 Main Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to make one more correction to the one that's in front of you.
Okay.
Okay.
On page 2 or 3,
Mm-hmm.
the 1, 2, 3, fourth whereas down, 5% should be removed from that. And it should state the applicant will submit a bond for the estimated site and facade work of $25,000.
Okay.
Oh,
Fine.
Wait. I'm sorry. Say that one more time. Where are we?
The fourth one down, this one right here.
Okay.
I want to remove that 5%. That 5% gets removed. That 5% should only be applied towards the site inspection fee.
Okay.
They have to submit the full construction amount for the site work of the 25, the bond for the 25,000.
So it's going to read the applicant will submit a bond for the estimated site and facade work of
Of
25,000.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
It
Very
was
good.
corrected under number 2 in the conditions.
Okay.
I'm sorry, number 1 of the conditions.
okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Can I? I'm sorry. I'm still finishing.
Yeah, me too. Wanna go? Oh, you're still reading.
I'm still reading.
This,
So this bond was, resolution was already approved. The only change that we made was to the bonding, and we took out the 5%.
oh,
So just
on-
that,
That was
just
it.
that. That's
okay.
all we're changing.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
All right. Fine.
I'm not crazy.
No.
We don't have to
All
do
right.
much.
My bad.
Okay, a motion to approve the amended resolution.
Make a motion.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye. That was easy. Yes. Oh, so Andy, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? I would just like it in the minutes that, so I spoke with Andy before the meeting. I kind of brought it up informally that, the Board of Trustees is contemplating reviewing the comp plan. Because it's only 10 more years. And I want in our minutes that that we would like definitely to have a say in how the comp plan looks. But we can't wait. The time that it took to create that original comp plan isn't feasible because we have applications right now for Uptown. 3 applications right now for Uptown that aren't really conforming with the existing comp plan. So I just would like to somehow let the Board of Trustees know that we would like to start looking at what they would like amended from the comp plan and how they would like the planning board to address that. And if possible, if we could provide comments, either individually or as a board as a whole, to the Board of Trustees. Did that come across?
Yeah, I think last time there was a comp plan committee that developed the comp plan, which was the 2010, it was supposed to be prepared in 2010 and adopted in effect for 20 years to 2030. It takes a few years to get this done. It took a long time the last time. Hopefully it can get done a lot sooner this time. I spoke before the Port Jeff Civic because I got invited with Mark Brosnan to talk about a few things, how the boards operate. And I just happened to mention that we have a comprehensive plan. There is development ongoing uptown. Perhaps with all the changes that have taken place in the last 15 years, climate change among them, economy, retail stores having a tough time, office use declining, that we need to really update the plan, have it in effect in 2030 to go to 2050, but also give us time to start on that. The mayor was present at that meeting and agreed with that, that approach.
I guess what I'm trying to say is we can't wait another 5 years because then it's already, I mean, how much will already be built out? Because we have the 3 applications before us. And I guess I would like to for the planning board to have some sort of say, because we do have applications that are already not conforming, in my opinion, to the comp plan.
I just want to speak to one point that I see happening with, this process of updating the comprehensive plan. It's the time element. We've been waiting for a very long time to revitalize Upper Port, and there's seems to be some momentum building, and there's these 3 substantial applications that are that we got to look at over the last couple of months, and I think if we dove into a full-blown update of the comprehensive plan, we could easily stall out those potential projects. I think the issue that we're most concerned about is the lack of retail that is being proposed in these 3 applications. So I would like that to be looked at specifically.
Yeah.
And not get into, a whole broad update.
Yeah, and is there a possibility of, so is there a way of making restaurant use not a hurdle, not a conditional use? Like, because I think a lot of the developers don't want to put restaurant in because that adds a layer for them getting grants or bank approvals.
So if we're looking in the C2 zone, I'm just not sure if a restaurant is a conditional use, but that actually is not the problem with restaurants. The problem with restaurants is they don't have a place to put their grease traps.
Okay.
So I'm currently working with the health department to see
Right.
if we can resolve that issue similar to what Nassau County
Because-
does.
Right, where they
Right.
have the internal grease traps.
Whatever the
Yeah, that's-
variance approach that Suffolk County will want to do, we're
Yeah.
looking to do that. But that's a big
Because-
hurdle with restaurants on the main
my-
floor. I understand what you're saying. I think maybe the approach would be to take a look at what the permitted uses are, because the code says in the C2 district by the railroad track, it says that mixed use is allowed, residents on the 2nd and 3rd floor, permitted uses on the ground floor only. So we have a limited amount of permitted uses, but the world has changed.
Okay.
And there might be a permitted use like pop-up stores, for example, a store that is there for less than 6 months. I'm just spitballing here. Other types of uses that are more applicable to the new 21st century
love it.
post-COVID.
Right.
So we'll get retail down there, but a new wave of retail, a new
Right.
definition of retail
Okay.
and try and avoid what's happening where they're putting their dead space on
Right.
Main Street.
Exactly.
And, all right, the public can use our gym. But, that's not what the
Yeah.
intent of the comprehensive plan was. It was to have active public space in there. So
Exactly.
I think if the planning board wants to amend the code, that would be a much quicker process than amending the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So that might be a shortcut.
I agree.
Okay, so I think what we need
Okay.
is to put our staff on, what does 21st century retail look like? I had an intern go and take a look at station yards, what's going
Okay.
on around the Ronkonkoma hub, what
Right.
works there, what could work at Port Jefferson. And we can
Right.
continue to do that until we come up with a punch list of modern retail uses or
Okay.
modern uses acceptable for street level.
Exactly.
So I think that might be an approach that we could do
Awesome.
in
I love it.
planning and bring it to the board.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Totally.
Yes.
right.
Engineer, planner.
Okay.
We've got that in the minutes because I just forgot what it was.
Yeah, I just wanted it in the minutes, just so that we had it all. And I did talk to Andy ahead of time, so I didn't blindside you this time.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Code cannot cover every location. There's an intent and spirit of the code, though not listed in there. Common sense has to be used. to
Yes.
Find what's something vaguely written.
Yes.
I'm going to embarrass you. I'm going to embarrass you. If I could steal the board's attention for 1 second, I was remiss in the beginning of the meeting. We have a new full-time staff member in the department. Parker has been converted from intern to full-time staff. So Parker's our planning aide in the village now, and so he's full-time. So you can call Parker if you have any questions.